Hello, Hockey World. Hello, Hockey World. So now I've been told that our show needs more cultural significance. I had somebody who emailed me that our show doesn't have enough cultural significance. So it was,
What does that mean?
I don't know what it means exactly, but I'm going to do something at the beginning of shows on Monday now that will bring us back into a cultural significant loose spot. So here I go. I'm going to read you a poem from today's popular songs. And
excuse me while I go throw up.
yes, here we go. So I'm going to start here. When I need motivation, my one solution is my queen. 'Cause she stands strong, yeah. She's always in my corner. Right there when I want her. All of these other girls are tempting, but I'm empty when you're gone.
Is this
And
Taylor
they
Swift?
say, do you need me? Do you think I'm pretty? Do I make you feel like cheating? And I'm like, no, not really. 'Cause I think I found myself a cheerleader. She's always right there when I need her. Oh, I think I found myself a cheerleader. She's always right there when I need her.
Okay, is this Taylor Swift or Katy Perry?
No, it's that guy. It's a guy. He sings an auto-tune.
She walks like a model. She grants my wishes like a genie in a bottle, yeah. 'Cause I'm the wizard of love, and I got the magic wand.
Okay.
All these other girls are tempting, but I'm empty when you're gone, and they say, do you need me? Do you think I'm pretty?
Okay.
Do I make you feel like cheating? And I'm like, no, not really.
That's a minute of my life that I'll never get back.
Can I contribute to this culture significance
Please do.
with another contemporary poem?
Yes, please.
Yayo, moolah, yayo, bleep better have my money. Y'all should know me well enough. Bleep better have my money. Sincerely, Rihanna.
Very nice, very nice. Okay.
I got nothing.
All right, well. We'll see if that answers the question for those out there who want us to have more cultural significance. Here I thought all of our talking about movies and stuff like that was helping, but maybe not. So we're going to start the show, and then Mike and Dan were discussing something before the show, which was really interesting. To which I told them, stop discussing interesting things when we're not on the air. So we're going to start that. We're going to go right into that, and then we'll follow from there. I've got a couple other ideas today. So
I forbid you. Yes.
Yes, you are forbade. Here we go. Ready? It's the
24th of August.
Wow. My sister's birthday's in 3 days. Really should get her something. Okay, Monday, August 24th. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, August 24th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Dan Petcher.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
That was a good standoff.
Oh,
And
I would never speak before Kevin Allen. I have
Dramatic
the
pause there, Dan. Dramatic pause.
I thought I was going last.
No, no one puts Kevin in a corner. And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you Monday through Friday all year long, which we're proving by this week being the slowest week probably in the entire hockey season, the last week of August, where there's not much to talk about at all. But Dan and Mike have come to the table with something to talk about, and I have other things as well. And but Dan, Mike, you asked a question earlier of Dan.
Well, no, we were talking about the Islanders and one of their top prospects, Michael Dal Colle, who is 19. He scored 31 points for the Oshawa Generals in the Memorial Cup, in the OHL and then the Memorial Cup playoffs. And it was my assertion that, and asking Dan whether he was going to get a good chance to make the Islanders. And Dan said yes. But the thing is, if he doesn't, he has to go back to Oshawa because he's 19. He wouldn't turn 20. I think his birthday isn't until I'll look it up. But he's not going to be 19 for a significant, or he's not going to be 20 for a significant period of time. And you have to be 20 to get to the American Hockey League. So Dan, I think they're going to give him an awful long look and a good chance to make the team because I don't think he's well served by going back to the OHL for another year.
Like I said, before we came on air, I just hate the rule. I understand the need for it, or the rule the first year after you're drafted. I have no problem with it then. But then when you get into a situation like this, where it's a second year, I've seen it happen in the past where they were stuck with Nino Niederreiter. They needed his contract at the time to go against the cap. He wasn't ready to play in the NHL. He needed to be in the AHL, but the only option was sending him back to juniors, and it didn't work, and that started a small snowball, which eventually became an avalanche between player and franchise and ended him elsewhere. I know Griffin Reinhart was really upset about going back to Edmonton to play in juniors with the Oil Kings that second season. I've seen it before. So from what I was told this year, he's gonna Michael Dal Colle will have every chance. Like, he has a realistic chance. This isn't like a facade. He has a realistic chance to make the team for two reasons. You have Nielsen, Oposo in contract years, as well as Grabner. They are looking for one of their picks to emerge where they can get production from somebody that's not making $2 or $3 million a year,
Right.
Someone on an entry-level deal, which is very important. And they want to see what he looks like in preseason playing next to Strome and Tavares. He will be given a fair shot. Whether he makes the team, I don't know.
19, he's 19. His birth date is June 20th, so he doesn't turn 20 until next summer. So
Right.
yeah, that would be another full year in the OHL. And until Oshawa gets eliminated, then he could go on a PTO to Bridgeport if they wanted him to.
Right.
But yeah.
Let's discuss this rule, Kevin, for a second. I mean, this is something that was set in place to benefit the junior hockey program in Canada.
Yeah. Well, it never works out perfectly because people's birth dates, get in the way of the happiness of
This is why we need test tube babies, guys. Just saying.
Yeah. But these are one of these situations where I think the fact that he has to go back to junior will play a role in the Islanders' decision.
Yeah.
And just because he can't go to the AHL, they'd rather have him with the NHL, I think, than go back to the OHL. So I mean, well, yeah, that is. It's
a roster move because they have too many forwards to begin with. Not even counting him, they have too many.
Well,
forwards.
this happened last year with Max Domi, right? I mean, this was the same situation we were in Max Domi in Arizona, who desperately wanted to keep him around, to keep him in the system, but they had to send him back. And my question is this: I mean, this was set in place to help the junior teams field better teams. And junior hockey is an amazing thing; it's an incredible program. But now we see, it's much more competitive now to go to college hockey, in which you can go out anytime you want to.
Right.
And and now we've even seen a guy run off to Switzerland, right? So not that that's going to happen all the time, but I mean, is this starts to play into? Is that a factor, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have this rule, though. Imagine what would happen if we didn't have this rule. They'd sign everybody and send them to the AHL.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? Yeah, because that's just a higher level.
But why 2 years? Why isn't 1 year good enough?
Well, I mean, that's a fair comment.
But,
I understand the first year. I am all for it.
Yeah.
All for it. But after it's your second draft year, I think you should be eligible to play in the AHL. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, there's already loopholes in this when it comes to European-born players who don't have contracts with European club teams. Like with the Leafs, William Nylander plays the first half of the year in Kasperi Kapanen, when he was with Pittsburgh, played most of the year in Finland. They both came over to the AHL. Nylander in January, Kapanen I think it was in April. They both played in the AHL in the second half or in the playoffs. They're both 18. They were both 18 years old. So I mean, I think what there should be a one-player exemption for each organization where that player can play in the AHL at 19. I mean, why not? Because I don't think Dal Colle is served well by going back to the Ontario Hockey League after he had over 90 points, after he was one of the best players for Oshawa in the Memorial Cup. What more does he have to prove down there? And it could open him up to the possibility of getting injured. I mean, who knows? But I think to progress his career, he needs to go to a higher level and not go back to the OHL.
If Dal Colle makes this team, let's say he does make this team, then it really lines. So there's gonna be some interesting roster questions. I know that Kirill Petrov, who was drafted, I believe, in 1983. No, it was 2008. It's just been so long, and he's finally here.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see he can go to Bridgeport. He has a two-way deal. He's on so they could send him there. But then you have to move someone off your roster. You have to move a Grabner, which I know they've tried to, or they would have to make a significant roster decision, unless you assume Grabner will get hurt in the preseason like he always does, or Grabowski will get caught with his head down like he always does. So one of those two things could happen too.
Yeah, there's usually always somebody hurt that kind of.
Usually is, right.
So, and most people do not think that Petrov is going to be a factor from what I hear. So,
I'm intrigued because just of his size and his strength. And I know that, when you're playing on a larger ice surface, that might not come to play as much. But on a smaller ice surface, his work in the corners and in front of the net intrigued me. I agree, Kevin. I don't know what to expect from him either, and I'm expecting him, honestly, to be in Bridgeport. But when you're 6'5" and 230, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and there, he's not obviously coming over here to be a scorer. So,
Right.
he's going to play a role, and maybe it's just his size alone that'll kind of carry him. But somebody will be hurt, and that'll open it up. But I think the questions you're asking about that are fair. The second year for the junior player, seems like it causes more harm than good for the player.
Yeah, and Domi played very well in the preseason last year for Arizona. I mean, a lot of people thought he made the club, and then he got sent back to London, and he was none too pleased. The question I have, Dan, is Brock Nelson still is unsigned. Has there been any kind of progress? Anything regarding that?
It's been all quiet on that front, but I've been told on multiple occasions it'll get done. I don't know, honestly, what's taking so long, and I haven't heard anything about it. Not since the draft, but at the draft, once again, I was like, it's going to get done, it's going to get done, and every time I reach out and try and find out something about it, it's the same thing, nothing about it, but no one seems too concerned about it. So I was told not to be concerned about it. However, the closer we get to training camp, you start raising some eyebrows. I do fully expect him that he will get in there. It's just a matter of what he wants to do. Does he want to sign? Obviously, the Islanders want to give him a bridge deal, or does he want to maybe bet on himself like Anders Lee did? Anders Lee last year signed a one-year deal, bet on himself, had a great season, and signed a very nice bridge deal the following year. So I think that's where Nelson has one or two options there.
You misspoke when you said nobody seems too concerned about it except for Mike, who's concerned about every contract.
That's true. That's true. Then he'll promptly tell me it's too much money.
Well, it's too much money for Grabowski.
Of course it is. You don't know that. I've never debated that.
That's pretty interesting. So there's something I saw the other day that I thought was kind of interesting, and then we're going to get into the question: who is the toughest team in hockey? Because this week, being a slow week, in general, what I'm going to do with my blog is go through these kind of questions, like who's the fastest team in hockey, who's the smartest. Who's the toughest team in hockey. So it's something I want the panel to think about while I talk about this next little story, which is fascinating because we all remember the line from Miracle, right, where they talk about just a bunch of kids from Massachusetts and New York, right? Or Boston, but Massachusetts and Michigan, is it?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Right.
People will come at you if you don't mention Minnesota.
Right. Well, here's yes, this hasn't changed that much, and I thought we were definitely seeing players come from other places, but still, we talked about this, so I saw this breakdown that was sent to me that I think is kind of interesting. And I just lost for a second. More NHL players are born in Minnesota, Michigan, New York, and Massachusetts than the other 46 states combined. So more from Michigan, Minnesota, New York, and Massachusetts than the other 46 states. So we're still.
My state's coming, though. My state's doing a great job with its hockey programs.
Right. Well, Connecticut?
Connecticut's doing a great job.
Yeah, I think this is not. This is definitely still. This shows more. You could go with 2 states. Now you have to go with 4. So it's definitely better. But I do think that we're still seeing the top states obviously come in. What's been kind of interesting is we've seen some big players come from other states. And I think that's what's made it all the more interesting.
But if there was a World Cup of states where we would put our teams up from each state represented, I would put my Connecticut team up against Massachusetts any day of the week.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, we have. What are your thoughts on this, Kevin? I mean, you follow this very closely.
My thoughts on specific.
Just the fact that we're still seeing the main, states feed the U.S. hockey program.
The hockey belt, as it's been called, is really not going to change. Even I think California, for example, has really made inroads, and I now see that as a very standard state for churning out NHL players. But there's just so many of them. There's so many teams in Minnesota playing high school hockey. Massachusetts has prep school, plus a lot of junior teams as well. And Michigan is a hotbed too, with the CompuWare program, the Little Caesars program. There's a lot. So that's not going to change, even though there's been growth in other areas. And I I would think that Toronto area, for example, still churns out a high percentage of Canada's players, even though they get them from everywhere.
Right.
It's
That's
popular.
true.
And so forth. And same thing, like, I don't know anything about the Russian geography, but I'll bet, that a high percentage of players come from the urban areas there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct, and eventually, I think you're right on betting on California in the fact that the California population base is so huge that when with the hockey being played there, and I remember going out to San Jose quite a few years ago, and their youth hockey program was just thriving, and now it's really picked up, and also it's huge. You can't discount the fact that these AHL teams are going to be in California this year. I think also because that's a cheaper way to go see hockey, and it's just more hockey to be seen. The AHL teams really do a good job. It's a great place to bring your kids, when they're just getting going. It's a really great environment for kids. The AHL is fantastic for that. So yeah.
Can I just add one quick story about AHL hockey? For every year, Bridgeport does a kids' day, and all the local schools send their kids. It's like a 10 o'clock start. If you're an adult, it's hell on earth because it's 8,000 screaming children. I usually sit up in the press box that day because I'll usually go if I'm off. And there was one game a few years ago where there was a line brawl during this game, and like at first, like the gasp, I think, from all the teachers that had taken the kids to the game, and then just the utter pandemonium of joy from the kids. It was hilarious. It was a lot of happy kids and a lot of anxious teachers.
Yeah, but fighting's not popular anymore, is it?
No, not at all. Trevor Gillies was involved in the line brawl, so.
Oh, gee, what a shock!
I mean, if you've ever been to a bench clearing brawl, I mean, there's nothing like it. I throw that out there.
It's part of viewing rec leagues. It's interesting. There's a little fear and there's a little.
No, it's got all kinds of sorts of things going on with it. Like, and the last thing we saw, was Emery maybe, running down the ice to take down who was it? The Ottawa goalie at the time. Remember that famous game over here? But yeah, I mean, that's the last time we've seen a goalie fight that I can remember. And that was 3 years ago now. But yeah, there was nothing like a bench clearing brawl to bring out excitement. And it's interesting how it does happen more in minor league hockey still. Now it does for sure, at least. But yeah, I'm all for bringing back the bench clearing brawl. We'll never see it, but I'm all for it. I saw a couple good ones when I was a kid. Really, really good ones, like record-breaking ones. They're really stuck in my mind. Let's get on to my question today then, which I'll try to echo it. Dan, maybe log out and log in.
Sure.
All right, so what I wanted to find out is I think things are changing. Like, I look at the Big Bad Bruins. They're not necessarily the Big Bad Bruins anymore. I look at the Flyers. They're not really the intimidating force. The Rangers are really not a very physical team. And some of these classic teams in the NHL that we think of as tough, as the toughest teams in hockey, are not really the toughest teams in hockey anymore. But who is? I mean, we're talking about fighting is not necessarily... I'm not really thinking of fighting anymore in this. You used to think about it in terms of fighting. I'm more thinking about it in terms of physical teams, like teams that just bring it physically and like to wear you down. And you can look at penalty minutes and stuff like that. But I think that that's sort of my question. Maybe I'll start with you, Kevin. But Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah.
Who do you think the toughest team in hockey is?
That's a really hard question. I guess I would tend to still think that the Kings are, because they're tough to play against. They have some size. The number of hits they churn out per game is high. They have a number of guys on the team that really like to hit. But the real sleeper, I think, would be the Columbus Blue Jackets.
You stole it. You stole it from me.
Yeah, I think the Columbus Blue Jackets are a very, very physical team. I don't know where they are on hits per game, but I bet they're among the league leaders. And also, they have a lot of fighting majors, and they have a lot of guys on that team that finish all their checks, and they're just hard to play against. So I would say the Kings and the Blue Jackets, and another team that hits a lot too, and they have that one line that I think is just the toughest line in hockey because of all the hits, and that's the Islanders. I mean, the Islanders, just dish out hit after hit after hit. But to me, they're not in the same category as Columbus and LA.
Right. Well, so far, I mean, Columbus is third in penalty minutes last year. And I do agree they're definitely a really tough team.
They have some felons on that team.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. I won't get into the exact.
They got a Flyers feel to them.
Yeah, they really do.
I'm
And
not saying that. I'm not being demeaning to them.
an old time Flyers field, and they
That little dirt to them, that little physicality, that sandpaper, that annoying. They really have some players that really annoy you.
yeah, and they work incredibly hard. That's just a hard working team.
Yeah.
And
See if I can find hits per game.
yeah, I found penalty minutes, and
The Islanders,
Columbus leads the league in major penalties by a lot.
right?
Yeah. Here's the hits per game
Okay.
last season, and hits per game. The Islanders were number 1, which is not surprising.
Wow.
The Kings are 2, the Maple Leafs are 3, the Flyers are 4, and the Blue Jackets are 5. So, you know, that's hits per game. I'm pretty sure that they led the NHL in fighting majors as well. So if they led in majors, they must have led in
They left in majors. 46 penalty minutes. They were third. This is a really interesting question. Without looking it up, guys, who do you think the number 1 penalty minute team in the NHL was? Because it actually the Blue Jackets had 978 penalty minutes. The top team in the league had 1,123, and the bottom team in the league had 549. So
Wow.
So the top team doubled.
Flames. The Flames had to be the lowest.
The Flames are the third to lowest.
Oh, okay.
The top team really surprised me a lot.
Is it
Dallas?
It's not Dallas. Dallas is 14th on this list.
Is it? I was thinking somebody. I just lost my mind. Is it Vancouver?
Vancouver's 5th. They are a tough team to play against. I agree with that.
Oh, they just have some dirt balls in that team.
I mean,
I do mean that in a disrespectful
the Islanders' penalty minutes are only 700. I mean, so as tough as it's something to lead the league in hits and be 25th.
Could it be the Pittsburgh Penguins?
It is the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh yeah. Speaking of dirt balls.
1,123 points from the Penguins.
They took some terrible penalties last year too.
Yeah, 13.7 penalty minutes a game.
Donnie was on that team.
Yep, that's why.
But 13.7 penalty minutes a game for the Penguins. That's almost 7 minors. Think about that.
I mean, I agree with the couple that Kevin mentioned, but let me throw in one or two others. I think with the additions of guys like Chris Stewart, with Kessler being there another year, with Bieksa coming in from Vancouver, that Anaheim has been trying to match up with the physicality of the Kings, and I think that with the acquisitions that they've made this summer, they're going to succeed. I think they have eclipsed the LA Kings in terms of in a lot of different places, and with the subtractions that have left LA, I think that they're going to be tops in the Pacific Division, and they have a lot of size, so I think they're going to be pretty imposing to play against. A team that last year was fairly imposing was Washington, but with all the changes that they've made, with Brouwer out, with Fair, and with Joel Ward leaving via free agency, I don't know. There's going to be a little bit of a gap there, so I don't know if they're going to even get close to being as tough a team as they were last year.
They still have Tom Wilson.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, he's one guy
who's probably putting an illegal check on his mailman right now.
You know what's funny about this is like the misconducts, right? When you look at misconducts, the Penguins had 18 misconducts and
probably all Downey.
4 game misconducts. So that's 22 times that they got a 10-minute penalty, right? Where the least penalized team, which you guys still haven't gotten, had only 2 misconducts the entire year.
New Jersey?
Nope. 2 misconducts the entire year. So as opposed to 22 from the Penguins. Nope, not Detroit. Detroit had
Buffalo. They were in the bottom of everything. So why not penalty?
Buffalo is actually 8th in the league in penalty minutes. They had 853.
It was a joke.
I know. This is kind of crazy. So the least penalized team is but here's a question for you. The Chicago Blackhawks, right? Stanley Cup team. I think of them as a very physical, tough team. I think of them as a physical.
They don't hit anybody.
They don't hit anybody. Bickle's,
but they're not physical.
Yeah, Bickle, right. So they were 29th in penalty minutes in the NHL.
That's not surprising.
Who is the bottom?
The 30th team is the Carolina Hurricanes.
Ah, okay.
Only 549 penalty minutes. A team that but when you look at fights, just major fights, like I said, the Pittsburgh, basically Columbus runs away with it with 46. But the second highest team in this list is Anaheim. So what you're saying, Mike, there is probably true with the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, and after that, you go to Pittsburgh, and then you go to a team that no one has mentioned. This is the second most penalized team in the NHL, but yet no one has mentioned them yet. And this kind of surprised me too, because I don't think of them, I don't see them a lot. So that's a little bit of a hint. They're a Western team, but
Avalanche?
Nope, not the Avalanche. This is this is
Dallas?
Nope. The only other team with over 1,000 penalty minutes last year besides the Penguins was the Winnipeg Jets.
Oh yeah.
You know, and with Buffalo and
I'm very happy they're in the Western Conference. I don't have to see them that much.
yeah, and with Buffalo and Trouba and Ladd, they have a good amount of physical players. So that does make sense.
You see them probably more than we do, Kevin. They're a tough team to play against, I assume.
Well, yeah, they are, and they've gotten, they've kind of come together. And last year they were sort of feeling their oats, and they sort of felt like they arrived, and they were playing with a lot more confidence. And generally that's reflected in just more physical play. So, and Mike just went through that. They do have Ladd and Bufflin and a whole host of guys that stick their nose in.
Yeah. No,
I think too is with the point to Anaheim is their physical players are also their point producers,
right?
Where they're guys who really take the body and very physical. Like for the Islanders, they led the league in hits, but that's primarily from their fourth line and Hamonic and Boychuk. They're not very physical in their top six, and I actually think they need to get more physical in their top six and spread it out a little bit. You look at the Ducks. Their best players, their point producers, their stars are also the guys that finish their checks.
Right.
Cal Clutterbuck, hitting machine.
Yeah, for sure. The fights per game is another fun stat to look at these teams, and see where that falls. And remember when fights per game was always around like 1 or 1.5 fights per game. You would see, the top team now is 0.54 fights per game. That's how few fights there were in the NHL last year. And that would be Columbus, who we talked about, and followed by Anaheim, and then Pittsburgh, then Buffalo.
Yeah, well, they had to entertain their fans somehow. But honestly, it's a sad statement for somebody like me who grew up with at the NHL, with fighting being an integral part of the game, and that it's really been pushed to the side now because teams can't afford to have a fourth line they can't play. I mean,
you have to be able to play hockey.
Yeah, they have to play hockey. It's like you can have a Casey Kazikis or a Clutterbuck or somebody like that who can either kill penalties or they can serve some sort of role or they can play an energy forward. But you can't afford to have John Scott playing on your fourth line and just lumbering out there for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
I was saying the Islanders got 30 goals from their fourth line.
Yeah.
That's really good. These guys are physical, but they can play hockey too.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're saying is that in the modern era, we would not see some of the, like Stu Grimson would never play.
Oh, I love the Reaper.
Yeah, and he's a great guy and fun guy, and everybody is a great teammate, but he would never be able to play in today's game.
Right.
And some of the great tough guys from the 70s wouldn't be able to play.
Well, the question is, like, what was the line of demarcation when teams realized that they had to have a fourth line that could play and contribute? To me, I would, and maybe this is too recent, but I thought it was the 2012 playoffs with the Devils when they had that fourth line of Gianta, Bernier, and I cannot remember the third player, but that line scored key goals in their run to the Stanley Cup final. And I think a lot of teams opened their eyes to the fact that they didn't have a fighter on that fourth line. They had guys who could play and guys who could play roles, and that got them further than anybody expected them to get.
I think the salary cap is a large part of phasing out the fighter because you just can't make mistakes with contracts now. Every dollar counts, whether it's $6 million or $1.5 million or $800,000. You need to get value of what you're paying for, and to pay somebody about $1 million just to be a punching bag does not necessarily help your team.
It's parity. Yeah, I mean, you can't afford, the races are so tight now.
Right.
You have one spot on your roster taken up by a guy who can't, play more than 3 or 4 minutes. So, it just doesn't work. And in the latter stages, back when you still had tough guys, they were getting $1 million.
Right.
And now you need that $1 million to go to a guy who can either kill penalties or be a secondary scorer or whatever.
Right. Now this is a copycat league, and I'm curious, with the success of Chicago and not taking a lot of penalty minutes, if we're going to see penalty minutes drop further, because the top teams here are not very successful.
Yeah, but the Red Wings did that throughout the 1990s, and
right.
that didn't change anything. And I mentioned before in my theory that the fourth line, would you be better off if you take your number 1 line in the AHL and made that your fourth line? Just for a point of discussion, because right now we still see that fourth line as, it has to be an energy line or it has to give you some checking ability. But the days of using your checkers against the top lines are long gone.
Oh yeah.
So why do you do that? Would you be better off? Well, I brought that up, and the best example that I can use is, when the Oilers won in 1990, which was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Their kid line was a huge part of their success, and they were a scoring line. I mean, they were an energy line. You could argue. That was Jelena and Adam Graves and Joe Murphy.
Wow, that was the fourth line. Wow,
that was their fourth line. They were all young players.
Wow.
Joe Murphy was a former number 1 overall pick.
Yes.
Yeah, they were all very young players, and by then Murphy, it looked like he wasn't going to pan out, and everybody was trying to prove themselves. And but I often wondered why people didn't look at that and say, why are we wasting, fourth line time for guys that, as a general rule, are not scorers. I mean, those guys obviously could all score.
Well, I mean, with Anaheim in 2007, the big line, I mean, the checking line, the Paulson, Travis Moen, and well, anyway, but the other line that was important for them was Getzlaf, Perry, and Penner was a third line. It was a bunch of rookies or a bunch of players who had limited experience, and that was the difference between them. It wasn't just like Andy McDonald or Teemu Selanne that got them to. They also had Pronger, Niedermeyer, and Boschman on defense, but they got scoring from their depth lines as well as their top line.
Right, and that's a great point. The other thing I was trying to do while looking through these penalty minutes things and trying to determine who was the toughest team is the NHL does a great job now, or actually ESPN does a great job at breaking out. They break it out by kinds of penalties that the teams take. So like a holding penalty, for example, which is a typical, a holding penalty to me means usually that the player's been beaten in some way, shape, or form, and somebody grabs onto it.
You've been outworked. Yeah.
Been outworked, right? So you got to hold him. Holding and hooking, are two penalties that come along those lines. And sure enough, like the number 1 team in holding penalties with 45 holding penalties last year was the Arizona Coyotes. And this is a team that you would expect that to be the case with, that they were getting outbeat, they were getting outworked. But the second most team with holding was the Washington Capitals, who were a very good team, but still taking a lot of holding penalties. And then after that, you get into New Jersey, Ottawa, and then Nashville, surprisingly. So, and likewise, when you go to hooking, you got the number 1 team with hooking penalties in the NHL, which is really shocking, is the Detroit Red Wings.
Well, that's what everybody kind of says that about them.
That's because they pick on every play.
That they're hooking and they're hooking.
Actually, if they called interference, Detroit and Washington would be in a permanent.
And that brings up this point, Kevin. I mean, if a team gets a reputation as this team hooks a lot, it sort of feeds into itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, mostly it is interference that's accused of. But, that oftentimes shows up in the form of hooking too. So.
Yeah, I've noticed. I mean, and so that's a tough one. And man, I wish we knew what was wrong with our Echo today, guys. I'm so sorry. We're trying to figure this out with Google. We haven't been able to figure it out. I'm trying my best to. I know it's very distracting, so we appreciate the fact that just pretend that we've fallen down a well of some kind and are talking to you from down there. It should be all right.
You want me to log off and try now?
Yeah, why don't you try logging off, Kev? Whoever else is trying it so far. We'll see who brings this on. So so the number one hooking team in the league is the Detroit Red Wings. So that to me was a really interesting thing. So we're still getting Echo right. So Why don't everybody log off at me? Let's do that.
Okay.
We'll come back in. We'll see if we can kill this thing. That way I can talk about you all while you're away. Okay, so there, with you and just Dan and I, it seems to be silent.
You want me to log off?
Yeah, log off and come back in anyway. Just see. All right, so here's Mike.
Yep.
All right, so they'll try that, but
Yeah, the number one hooking team could be very easily misconstrued.
yeah. That's true. Well, we're not going to go there, but that's a different way of looking at it. But the team with the most minor penalties was the Winnipeg Jets, and the Detroit Red Wings had the 4th most minor penalties last year in the NHL. So that's a lot of, I mean, that's Detroit, Pittsburgh, Columbus. I mean, Winnipeg, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Detroit, Washington. They're top 5 minor penalty teams. So you know, and here's and the final one I'll do. I don't know a lot of these, but I find these always interesting. The goalie interference penalties. Actually, are 2 teams in the NHL that had 11.
Chris Kreider.
Right, 2 teams with 11 goalie interferences, and 1 team with 10, and then it falls off pretty drastically from there. But and there's 2 teams with none. The Kings, we would think would get goalie interference, had no goalie interference penalties at all. But you think of the Kings as the team that runs that does go to the net a lot, and that's just going to the net seems to be the thing that would get you that. And the Edmonton Oilers had no goalie interference penalties, which does play into fact that they are, you know, a perimeter team. So it does make sense.
Yeah.
But the top teams in this were Pittsburgh, Boston, and Vancouver.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Yeah.
That all makes sense.
It does. It does.
Zach Cassian, Brad Marchand, Steve Downey. You know, usually it's a team with a professional disturber of the highest order who likes to get into the craw of the goaltender. I would think that Montreal would be up there with Brendan Gallagher because he likes to step in front of the net and really get underneath the skin of the goaltender.
They're ninth.
Hornquist goes hard to the net, and
Yep.
you know, Crosby is a driver. You know, drives to the net.
So I mean, I think when you look at this, you honestly have to say to yourself, well, the Pittsburgh Penguins, at least, I've heard a lot of criticism about the Penguins last year. You know, that their forwards didn't show up at the right time. We've heard things about Fleury over the years. We've heard many times that their defense is just young and inexperienced, and that's a big issue, and that their defense is a problem. But really, I think they have to look at the penalty minutes. I mean, the amount of penalties this team takes is pretty staggering. I mean, that they are up there with 1,100 penalty minutes, and that has to affect you. That has to affect your record at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, what I would do is look and see what they did the previous year. Is this a pattern or just?
Yeah, let me check that out. I can check that out right now.
But the thing is that players like Downey are gone now. I mean, if you remember, they brought in a bunch of players to provide that sort of, that. Yeah,
they an edge.
Yeah, they were 21st in the NHL in 2013-14.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's really not a pattern.
No, to me, it shows that maybe this is an issue. That this is a team that has to, because that's where they've always been. They've always been around the 20th, and then suddenly they're first in penalty minutes. So last year's not making the playoffs, they made the playoffs, but last year's eventual collapse. I think you have to hold a little bit to this.
It'll be interesting this year too, because they're expecting a lot from some of their young defensemen, and usually when a defenseman gets beat, that leads to minor penalties as well.
Yeah. So who's the toughest team, though? Let's finish our thoughts here with this, and then come to our conclusion. So we've talked about tough teams. And Kevin, are you sticking with your toughest team?
I'm going with the Kings, just because they're hard to play against. They have size. You know, they do hit. They will drop the gloves. They're pretty mentally tough as well. I mean, there's really 2 kinds of toughness. There's, you know, we've talked about this before, guys that dish it out and hard to play against, etc. And then there's a mental toughness. Like, you know, the Chicago Blackhawks' mental toughness is second to none. I mean,
right. And that's a great point.
Yeah, and you know, when the Red Wings had their run too, you know, they can take a beating and not let it bother them. So they have some mental toughness. But, you know, the Kings have sort of everything you want from a tough team. They can dish it out. They can take it. They have size. They will hit. They can fight. And, you know, they're hard to move in front of the net. All the guys play that way. So I think I'll just give them the edge. And they've been successful. I mean, the Blue Jackets are an up-and-coming team, but you know, we haven't seen them make an extended run, so it's hard to call them the toughest team.
Yeah, Yeah, no, that's a good one. And another last thing I wanted to throw about this, and then before we go to Dan for your ultimate toughest team, is last year, like I said, we saw two teams with over 1,000 penalty minutes in the year. If you go back to 13-14, there were 7 teams with over 1,000 penalty minutes.
Wow.
So we saw far fewer penalties last year called. And if you go back even further than that, leaving the half season because that's impossible to do. You go 11-12. You have 12 teams with over 1,000 penalty minutes. So this is really a trend that we've gone from 12 to 2 teams in 4 years with over 1,100 with over 1,000 penalty minutes. Like Philadelphia in 2011-12 had 1,300 penalty minutes. So it's completely another 200 penalty minutes beyond that. So, and yet that year Nashville had only 600 penalty minutes. So we always see a variance in this whole thing. But so Dan, what is your? Are you going to go with Columbus?
I would actually I've been swayed as I've been thinking about this. I do think the Kings are probably the most, like Kevin said, the style and they just exude toughness. I do think if I had to choose one, I'd go with the Ducks.
The Ducks, okay.
I think Columbus can be. I agree. They're up and coming, and they still kind of have to prove themselves. But and I think by far they're the toughest team in the East. But I would say the Ducks.
What do you got, Mike? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to stick, in terms of the toughest team, I'm going to stick with Anaheim. And in terms of the mental toughness, I didn't think of it that way. I would have to consider the New York Rangers because, I mean, you have to be mentally tough to be able to get to the Stanley Cup final and the conference final in 2 years in a row. I think
and overcome such utter disappointment.
Right. Yeah, and to be able to win in overtime in Game 7 and overcome some injuries. They lost Zuccarello last year and still got the conference final. I think they're a very, very tough experience. Not physically tough because they have a lot of smaller players, but I put them next.
I think Rocky agrees with me.
Rocky agrees.
He believes the Ducks are the toughest team. And what dog doesn't like a chase a duck? So there you have it. I'm going to go with, Everything okay there, Kevin? Oh yeah, there we go. Kevin's been muted temporarily while the dog mauls the deaf guy in the background. This way we won't have that on tape. So when UPS comes after you for their mauling. I'm actually gonna go with Columbus on this one because, and I know, I really feel as if that when you play against them, over the last several years, Anaheim, it's weird because when I see Anaheim live, I've seen them against, of course, the Flyers. I've seen them live. I haven't seen them live because they haven't been to a final since Ottawa, so I don't see them live very often. But they don't bring a very tough game into Philly for whatever reason. Anaheim hasn't played well in Philadelphia, so but Columbus has really played hard, and Columbus reminds me of the Devils in the day that were really just impossible to. They checked you every zone, every which way, and yet and they have 4 lines that check you too, and they work so hard. I mean, I last year took a tape of one of the Columbus games and showed it to our soccer team, and just showing them how this team always had 2 players on the puck all the time, and the Columbus just outworked everybody. And then, of course, maybe all the injuries, I'm not saying that's tied together, but all the injuries has resulted from this team. So if they stay healthy, there's no reason to think. And I also think the Blues are a tough team, and I think they have been not talked about too much here. But I don't know if how that much that changes with Oshie, but I think that the Blues defense is tough. I mean, those guys it's a tough defense to get through.
I think Pietrangelo is tough, but I think Bouwmeester and Shattenkirk are more skilled guys. And other than
they might be physically tough, but they haven't conquered the mental aspect of it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean defensively. I didn't mean defensemen. I just meant defensively all around. Their offense.
Their style stunts creativity to the offensive players that they have.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I could definitely see that being the case as well. So yeah, I mean So it's a good question. I'm glad you got. We'll see what the readers think, and tomorrow, and I'll bring in the results from that too. Tomorrow, I wanted to talk about who the fastest team in the NHL is, so you can prepare yourself ahead of time for that.
Okay.
Who the fastest team would be, because that's definitely debatable. But when you see teams come in, there's no statistics for this, so we can't pull up the charts for this one. So that'll be good. Just on who the fastest team in the NHL is. I've got a couple that I really like. Real quick news note, and Kevin, you're muted in case you I don't know if I can unmute you. If
He'd have to unmute himself, Act.
Okay, yeah, Kevin, you can unmute yourself when you're ready. Maybe I can't just.
I mean, he'll do it in a minute. Act.
Okay, cool. No, I don't know if he's frozen completely.
No. He said he put up.
Got it. Okay, Ehrhoff has signed with the LA Kings. We want to talk about that briefly.
Yeah.
Excellent. The Ehrhoff signing comes. He's been rumored in many places, and this was kind of a sneaky place for him to end up. I really didn't hear him too much with LA, and yet there he goes. What are your thoughts on the Ehrhoff signing, Kev?
Well, I mean, I like it for them. They needed another puck mover, I felt, and it gives them depth. I mean, there's still uncertainty regarding Voynov. Remember, he's still under suspension, so no one's quite sure how that's going to work out. And I mean, there's still a team that considers themselves a Stanley Cup contender, and you have to cover all your bases. So I didn't see what he signed for.
1.5.
1.5.
So that's a real reasonable price, obviously, and that that really helps him, I think.
Right.
I really like this signing. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Voynov, as Kevin said. I mean, could be a termination, it could be a long suspension. So the Kings really had to cover their bases. I know that they like Braden McNabb. They re-signed Jamie McBain as a sort of a bottom pairing or seventh defenseman. They have a former first-round pick in Derek Forberg, however you want to pronounce the name, who could be in the mix. But Ehrhoff played very well for Buffalo a couple years ago. Had an injury-plagued season last year with Pittsburgh. He's a quality veteran. He's played in that division before, so he knows the landscape with Vancouver and San Jose.
Against him a lot. That's why I thought the signing was. That's why I thought they probably looked at his time in Vancouver when he was really good, and his time in San Jose when he was very good too. So
yeah, he's a solid veteran, and if he's healthy, I think he's a top 4. I think he's going to be in their top 2 pairings.
They can definitely use it. There was a tweet I saw from a reporter out in California that said the reports of Slava Voynov being released from jail aren't correct. I don't know if you saw this or not, but that he does remain in custody at Seal Beach, which is sounds like a lovely place to be in jail. Seal Beach. If you're going to be in jail somewhere, that seems like a nice place.
The new black.
Taking the sights at Seal Beach. Well,
right, taking the sights at Seal Beach. I mean, that's different than Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Right now,
Rikers Island.
Yes.
Actually, Alcatraz could be a Seal Beach.
Yes, that's true.
It's actually true. It probably is.
Yeah.
It definitely is. But
culture. You're bringing the culture to the program, Kevin.
That's good. I appreciate it. The San Francisco culture. Yeah. So he's still in.
By the way, I did not understand any of that. What you did at the start of this with the poetry and. So,
I was reading the number 1 song right now in the country, which is Coach's which is called Cheerleader. And if you have a kid, if you have a daughter who's 13 years old, you hear that song 17 times a day. So that's why every time I heard the lyrics, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I'll provide some culture tomorrow when I play the first part of In the Court of the Crimson King.
Yeah, no, we won't do that.
But no, I mean, what I think is at work here, and we talked about this before we went live, is the fact that right now the NHL has not made any kind of decisions, has not given any kind of real indication of what's going to happen with the players who have been in trouble over the summer, with Jarrett Stoll, with Mike Richards, and now some of these things are unresolved, so they really can't. But something like Ryan O'Reilly with his situation during the summer, we don't know what is going to happen, and the LA Kings don't know what is going to happen with in terms of the league, what they're going to do to Slava Voynov, if they're going to put a rather lengthy suspension on him because of the situation, or whether they're going to terminate the contract. So maybe this is an indication that they are going to terminate the contract, but I think they're just covering all their bases.
Yeah, all indications to me were that they weren't thrilled about having Voynov back, even if he does come back. I don't know. I mean, he's a good player and everything like that, so you'd think they would be happy, but I think there's so much that went on that Voynov could be moved, and even was talked about. There were even rumors about him being moved last year at the trade deadline, which were phenomenal considering he still wasn't resolved. But I haven't heard any real sign that the Kings are going to be welcoming back to Slava Voynov. So, have you heard anything about this, Kevin? Or?
No, but I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to go either way on that because I just don't know. I mean,
yeah.
the
Fair enough.
his value, the way they played without him,
Yeah.
and I don't know how the Kings felt about what he actually did, how much information. I mean, we still really don't know
Yeah, we don't.
exactly what happened, and that's always an issue. I mean, so many people comment as if they know everything that happened, but
Right.
I will say this: it was pretty clear by the NHL suspending him prior to him even being charged that there had to be a preponderance of evidence,
Yeah.
or at least enough. Maybe
Right.
preponderance is not correct, but at least enough evidence to convince the NHL that they could suspend him. Now, the reason I bring that up is they have not suspended Patrick Kane.
Right.
And my guess is that they simply don't have any of the facts, and as often is the case in these rape cases, and don't cast me in making judgment either way because I simply do not know.
Right.
Right.
This is a very difficult crime to prove, and oftentimes it's the victim, the alleged victim, never it's her word against his word. Sometimes not, but often the case. So
Yeah.
that may be why the NHL has not done anything with Patrick Kane.
It's true, and they really haven't made a decision on Mike Richards yet either, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, that's still that's still being, things are being determined there, and I think that Voynov being suspended as he was by the Kings was in the wake of what happened in the sporting world after Ray Rice and after Adrian Peterson. So the NHL was being circumspect about approaching something and erring on the side of caution. Voynov was getting paid, but he wasn't able to play. And now, now after serving his time, I would think that the NHL would make a ruling in terms of, now that he is done with that, whether he will be suspended for prior actions. And that's, we know what happened with Stoll. Were brought down to, I believe, a misdemeanor. Richards is still up in the air. So is Kane. So I don't think they're going to make any judgments until there is some resolution to either one of those situations.
yeah.
Or at least more evidence.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's two type of things here. You have your cases like Voynov and your cases like Kane, where you have to wait and you have to let the legal process go through. That's one of the few things. Obviously, if charges are brought up, you can suspend him. But the final thing, you have to wait and see how the court plays it out. But in the case of Stahl or the case of O'Reilly, look, if you get liquored up and smash your car through a Tim Hortons, you probably should miss a few games. There probably should be some supplemental discipline from the league as well. I know if I'm in New Jersey tonight and if I get liquored up and drive through a Krauser's, my job's not going to be happy with me.
Yeah.
I just don't like seeing.
Yeah, it's true. Really,
I don't want to get to a place where, those things should be taken seriously. The DWI should be taken seriously. It shouldn't get slapped on the wrist. The NFL years ago slapped people on the wrist for doing some things under Tagliavue. Years ago, they showed a blind eye to a lot, or hey, you'll miss a start, you'll miss a couple of games here, and things snowballed out of control. I'm not comparing this at all to that. I just think, look, if you break the law, especially when it comes to substance or alcohol, there should be some supplemental discipline as well.
Yeah, that's the point at which you never can tell, like that, and the point at which the NHL has, they've lost players like Pelle Lindbergh to drunk driving, so you really can't. It's so hard for the NHL to actually say something or to do something. It would be hard for your business if you were fired for or any of us were fired for got in trouble for a DUI, for the business to actually suspend you. I don't know if they can. I don't know the rules on that. I don't know how that works.
Look, I'll give you an example. I don't want to name any names, but when I was at ESPN, there was a prominent NHL analyst, not named Barry Melrose, who got into a car accident, had some issues, and they didn't renew his contract because of it.
Yeah. Well, that renewing a contract is one thing, but suspending, is another.
It was one of those things where they were in negotiations to renew his contract, and they decided to part ways because of it.
Yeah. This is really it's a tough line to draw. It's a shame that we have to talk about this, and we have so many things happening at the same time in the last year or so with these players. But hopefully we won't have much more to talk about than this. The NHL started their 30-30 thing right now with the Predators today, so check that out on NHL.com. It's pretty cool. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow with the Who's the Fastest Team in Hockey, and really, and any other thing we can think of to talk about. Well, to get us through this week because it's a tough one. But we really appreciate you watching, and what we find is it's so funny you guys are watching more and more, even though we have less and less to talk about. So thank you for sticking with us. We're going to have more and more to talk about soon. Remember, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We'll talk to you soon.